All right, EJ, it is Evil Empire Day here on the Bootleg Football Podcast. We are talking Patriots, we're recapping 2021, and we're looking forward to 2022. Every single move that they had made between the end of the season until now, and how that's probably going to affect them as we quickly approach the start of training camps. By the time this comes out, I think training camp's only going to be a couple weeks away. So it's almost here, man. It's almost here. Excited to talk Pats today. Lots to go over. Lots of questions to pontificate about because this is a very confusing team to break down. But we're going to at least try. But before that, how you doing? How you feeling? What are you drinking?
I feel like we're Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine. We have a team of mystery here that we get to kind of pick apart. Lots of moves. Some, I'd say lots of familiar faces. Certainly not one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So lots of familiar names, but some new ones in key places that make it very interesting, both on the coaching staff side and the player side. So we'll get into all of that as we do in this series regularly, digging apart all the moves. But yeah, rolling through the AFC East, rolling through all the divisions. We're now almost a third of the way through, not quite. And, that's feeling pretty good. It seems like fans are resonating to that. So yeah, we should get to it.
Well, we're going to start off the show every how do I phrase that? I've been drinking cognac for like a solid 90 minutes now, so spare me. We're going to start off this show the way that we do every other show. Looking at the 2021 Patriots, kind of giving a little quick recap of everything that went right, everything that went wrong, between the months of September and January of last year. They did finish with a 10-7 record, second in the division, maybe a little bit better than a lot of people expected, coming off a 7-9 year the year before that, which was the absolute bottom of the Belichick era Patriots. That was the worst it ever had been, and they were still an average team. And then all of a sudden, they spend a bunch of free agency. They draft a young quarterback who's looking pretty good, and then they're right back to being a double-digit win team. So, like I said, evil never sleeps. But they ended up second in the division. They did make the playoffs. Didn't go well for them in the playoffs, but they did make it. 4-5 at home, that's something that we're not used to seeing at all from the Patriots. Mm-hmm. Usually they're a fortress at home. They dropped several that were probably winnable. Road record, though, 6-2. They were their usual road warrior selves. They ran the ball well. They played good defense situationally. Mac, for the most part, took care of the ball. A couple games here and there where he slipped up like all rookies do, but for the most part, he was very efficient for them. Last 5 games, though, uncharacteristic for the December New England Patriots, 2-3 record to finish things out. Did kind of sputter towards the end there, and then obviously got kind of walloped in the playoffs by Buffalo, like everybody else does. But it was interesting. We're used to seeing, them kind of get stronger as the year goes on, and then they're full steam ahead straight into the winter. And I don't want to say that there was a crack in the armor, but I think when you look at how the Bucs operate late in the year under Tom Brady, and you look at how the Patriots operate late in the year under Mac Jones, I think it is now clear to me, at least, that a lot of the clutch factor, a lot of that, turning Gillette into a fortress whenever the snow starts falling, a lot of that I think really did come down to Tom Brady more than anything else, and we got a while to go until Mac Jones reaches that same status. I'll put it diplomatically that way.
I think we give Mac Jones a little bit more road. I mean, he was a rookie quarterback coming into some of the biggest shoes ever. So I wouldn't expect the same results. And yeah, they sputtered a little bit. 2-3 at the end. For longtime Patriots fans, I know that's hard to swallow. They have seen it one way for 20 years, and they expect it to be that way. It's not going to be with this much change, but Mac played really well. I think better than a lot of people expected, especially after the year before, and the fact that Mac was not the most heralded quarterback in the class, but played better than most of them in his rookie year. And going 6-2 on the road, as a rookie quarterback is something else. So while they were strong in some areas, a little bit weaker than they have traditionally been in others, I would imagine that will even out a bit. Is he going to get to Tom Brady-ish levels? I don't think that's a reasonable expectation for just about anybody, because Tom Brady is, the winningest quarterback of all time by far. So, but I think that December feeling might come back a little bit more to Foxborough as Mac gets more comfortable. All rookie quarterbacks struggle, and he struggled less than most.
Yeah, I mean, people had kind of lukewarm expectations for him. Not that I had like massive expectations for him, but I did have a higher grade on him coming out than I had on Tua. Mm-hmm. So, I did like him a lot as a prospect, but even people that liked Mac Jones, maybe didn't expect him to be as successful as a rookie as he was. Like, he was cool, calm, collected, efficient, for the most part, took care of the ball, flashed some really nifty mobility here and there in terms of avoiding pressure, operating in space. A lot of Patriots fans aren't used to seeing that from their quarterbacks. So, there was really a lot to like. I thought he had a very good rookie year, as good a rookie year as you can hope for. Mm-hmm. And, speaking about him versus Tom in that game, like, the Patriots really gave the Bucs under Tom Brady, who were a buzzsaw, all they could handle. Like, that game came down to the very, very end with, let's be honest, the Patriots being outgunned roster-wise and having a rookie quarterback against the GOAT. So I think there's the 10-7 record was exceeding a lot of expectations, and it could have even been better than that. So there's still a lot of room for growth here. In terms of the power structure at B, how do I put this? They're both the most stable organization in the league and possibly the most confusingly unstable organization in the league, in the sense that the man at the top, Bill Belichick, been there for 23 years. He is the rock upon which the conference is built. Let's be honest, he is. But we don't know who their coordinators are. They don't have an offensive coordinator listed. They don't have a defensive coordinator listed. They do have a special teams coordinator, Cameron Ankert. He's been there for 5 years. But we don't know for sure who's actually calling the plays on offense and defense. We think that it's either Gerard Mayo or Steve Belichick that's calling it. I'd probably lean towards Steve on that, but we've also heard some people say, like, no, it's really Mayo. On offense, we don't really know who's going to be calling the plays. All we know right now is that Matt Patricia works with the offensive line and that Joe Judge works with quarterbacks and, spends some times with receivers as well. So we think that he's going to be calling the plays because he's the one working with the quarterbacks. But, I mean, shit, I would even argue that Brian Hoyer is secretly the real quarterbacks coach. So it's an amazing dichotomy between stability at the very, very top, but then in terms of all the middle management level, we don't know who's doing what. So it's stable maybe on the inside, but at least from the outside looking in, like, how do we evaluate a staff when we don't know who's actually got the keys?
It's difficult to do. Matt Patricia is not even listed on offense, which is fascinating. If you go to the coaches page for New England, he has his own category. Down at the bottom, he is listed as senior football advisor. That's it. That's all it says.
Hey, we don't know what that means.
No, it's his very own category. It's not offense, not defense, not special teams, just senior football advisor. So he is there. We know he's doing things, but we don't know what. This is very Belichickian. Bill has famously been, I don't want to say fast and loose, but vague with injury reports. Doesn't really care. Basically sort of tempts the league to fine him for not sending out stuff on time or fully fleshed out, or just not reporting stuff. This is sort of one more facet, right? One more new wrinkle for the Patriots to just say, we're not going to tell you who the coaches are. I mean, we're going to tell you who the coaches are, but we're not going to tell you what they do. So good luck with that. It'll be interesting to see from an effectiveness standpoint how this, let's call it a hybrid structure, because we can't really call it anything else. We don't know what the structure is. how it works out. And over time, if it shakes out that it becomes clear that Joe Judge is calling more of the plays, or who knows, Hoyer's having more input. I've certainly heard that conspiracy theory that Brian Hoyer, although he's a player, listed as a player, he's been in this offense for as long as anybody, and he's, sort of secretly calling the plays. He's got the headset on, so why not just have him call the plays? It'll be fascinating to see how it shakes out on both sides of the ball, because again, last year we had questions about one of their coordinators. So who's the defensive coordinator? This year we've got questions about both. So it's an interesting evolution. Patriots always seem to make it work. They're comfortable with it, which I think is the thing that matters the most. And a lot of the players, a lot of the participants in this grand play are very familiar. They've been around the Patriots a long time. The Patriots value loyalty possibly more than any other team in the NFL. And these are not newcomers, right? They're on their second or third comeback with the Patriots, or have always been there. And so that breeds a lot of shorthand among the coaching staff, a lot of familiarity, a lot of comfort. So they can sort of get through and over problems quicker than many coaching staffs have, because there's so much tenure and experience on the staff.
I have a conspiracy theory, because how I mentioned, Brian Hoyer's the real quarterbacks coach, which I promise that makes a lot more sense than you think, even though he's the backup quarterback. He's got more experience in the system than all the actual coaches do. So, and he's a quarterback. He's probably a quarterback's coach. He's just also a player. But I have a conspiracy theory on defense, because that's the one that I think is even harder to figure out. I'm pretty sure Joe Judge is going to be the quote-unquote play caller on offense. Defense is the harder one to figure out, because I have had the same number of people tell me that Mayo calls it and the same number of people that tell me that Steve calls it. I think it's a little bit even more complicated than that. I think that Mayo and Steve set the front. You know who sets the coverage as the quote-unquote pass game coordinator? It's Devin McCourty. He's it. Because he's on the field, so he's the one who sets the coverage anyway. He's 35. He's been there forever. He knows the system like the back of his hand. He is the system. It's kind of like how, Tom Brady is his own offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Devin McCourty is their pass game coordinator. When he's on the field, it's like, all right, what's the personnel grouping? And then he looks at the formation, and he just fucking sets it. Because he sets the coverage, and then the front sets off that. Even if they never admit it, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, because Devin is, again, he's probably more experienced in this system than all the actual coaches are. He's been there that long. I think this is a very player-driven team, unlike almost any other team in the league, which they can get away with doing because they're also one of the three oldest rosters in the league. They're extremely experienced.
So what you're telling me is that if Brian Hoyer or Devin McCourty gets suspended for PEDs and can't be around the team,
fucked. They're fucked.
Half the offense and half the defense is going to drop away.
Yeah,
I'm here for it. But it is interesting to see the player progression within New England, and how we're going to get to the notable coaches here in a second. It's a decent segue, but how a couple of them you were like, oh, of course, they were basically a coach on the field anyways, and now they just wear the polo instead of the pads. So the Patriots do this in a very particular way. People say a team is like family. This is like a family business, which is a whole nother layer in terms of, it actually is a family business on the defensive side, but in terms of players that come through, spend a long time with New England, have a ton of experience, as you said, more experience than maybe even some of the coaches they're dealing with, and then become the coaches themselves. That's a common thing on some teams for a few players. For New England coaches, it's I don't want to say it's the rule, but it's much more common than it is typically league-wide.
In terms of notable coaches under the mystery layer that is coordinators, they also have a lot of guys that have bounced around the same programs. And I consider Alabama and Patriots to be the same. We talk about family and extended family.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. You can see how close to the core that Belichick keeps this staff in terms of coaches that he's worked with before, players that played under coaches he's worked with before. It's a very, I think familial is I think you hit it right on the head. Like, it is a familial group in terms of the assistants.
Also one of the smallest coaching staffs in the NFL. Bears noting that the team that we'll talk about tomorrow, the Bills, have like 25 coaches listed on their coaches page. Patriots have like just over half of that.
Which they might have more than that. They're just not listing them because they're the Patriots.
And they're the players, so you can't list them on the same page. Yeah. So on offense, notable coaches, we do this every episode. Ivan Fears, the running back coach, I put him at the top because he has 31 years of NFL experience, not 31 years of coaching experience, 31 years of coaching experience in the NFL. That's a lot. 3 decades coaching in the NFL is a ton. Joe Judge is listed as offensive assistant. That's his title. Former Giants head coach most recently. Troy Brown, here's the one. Here's the example. He is the wide receiver and kick returners coach. That's a very interesting designation. Haven't seen that one throughout the league. Usually it says something like special teams assistant. No, it says specifically kick returners coach. Former wide receiver, spent his entire career, 15 years with the Patriots. No surprise that he's on this staff. He followed the path that we just laid out. Billy Yates, assistant offensive line coach, former guard with the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Browns. Another one from in-house. And, keeping with the theme, Vinny Sunseri is a name that a lot of folks will recognize. He's coaching, he's assistant, he's just running backs coach, but I think if you've got a guy like Ivan Fears that's been coaching running backs for 31 years, Vinny Sunseri is the assistant, whether it says so or not. Former NFL safety from Alabama, came to the league, got drafted, went back to Alabama to do his, I call them rehab years under Nick Saban, because so many coaches and former players go to Alabama for a year and then get a job somewhere else. Spent a year as a grad assistant back under Saban at Alabama, and now he is back in the back in the NFL, this time as a coach under Nick Saban, under Bill Belichick. I just confuse them because they're like
same
uncles,
thing.
uncles, cousins, like you said. It's the relatives from down south, like went from the family farm in Alabama, now he's up in New England. On defense and special teams, Jared Mayo, inside linebacker, former LB, spent his entire career with the Patriots. Sounds familiar. Steve Belichick, outside linebackers coach, Bill's son. Brian Belichick, safety, Bill's other son. So when we say family business, in reality, it is a family business, especially on the defensive side. But all those coaches have been in or around or working with the Patriots in one capacity or another for a very long time. If you added up all their Patriot-centric experience, I think it would be greater than any other team in the league if you took coaches and said, how many years have you spent with this franchise? That sum total for the Patriots all jammed together, I think, would dwarf any other NFL franchise. Could be wrong. Don't have numbers to back it up, but it sure feels that way.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how close to the vest this whole organization plays it. It's like the mob. Like once you're in, man, you're
Different kind of family.
By the way, just random fun fact, to put in perspective how recent Vinny Sunseri was a player. Like he's a young guy. If you go back to the secondary, just the safeties group actually that he played with at Alabama, because he came out in 2014. Again, not that long ago. The safety corps at Alabama that he played with, his teammates, it was Sunseri and HaHa Clinton-Dix were the starters. The guys behind them were Nick Perry, Landon Collins, and Eddie Jackson. That's just insane.
Yeah, the class behind him.
Even by Bama standards, that's nuts. Just that being your college safety group. And Sunseri might have been like the 4th or 5th best player in that group, and he ended up being the starter. It's wild, man. So yeah, he really played not that long ago. He's a pretty young guy. He's only 28. And again, once you're in New England as a coach, you don't get out. So he's going to be there for the next 20 years. As long as Bill's there, he's going to be there.
Unless he goes to be like the defensive coordinator at Alabama and takes a stint at the farm and then comes back.
In terms of free agency and losses or personnel losses in general, again, this can be trades, it can be guys they let walk, it can be guys they cut, all manner of personnel losses. The thing that really sticks out to me here is how much turnover they had within their linebacking core. And this was an older, very experienced linebacking core. It seems like they're making a concerted effort to get younger at the position and in particular get faster at the position. Jamie Collins, gone. Dante Hightower, Patriots legend, gone. Kyle Van Noy, still a great player in my opinion, gone. That one probably more surprising than any of them. They are making an absolute effort to prioritize speed and flexibility. Kind of seems like they're moving away from, I don't want to say one-trick ponies, but more in the role player that we mix and match and have certain packages for. I think they kind of want to. I think they want to be able to deal with no huddle stuff, especially from Buffalo, a little bit better by having more versatility on a down-by-down basis, so that they're not, they don't get caught once in a personnel grouping that's not optimal. And, they can't get out of a certain call because Dante Hightower can't handle certain things in coverage, or, Van Noy can't handle certain things. I think they want to go more towards the do-it-all realm of linebacker. So that one fascinated me. And then also, obviously, trading Shaq Mason for a fifth-round pick. I still don't get it. The J.C. Jackson, letting him go to the Chargers, that one is a little bit more understandable, because they do have a lot of corners, like young corners they like. Like I get that one more. Shaq Mason for a fifth. Come on. You could have done better than that.
That's a favor to Tom. That's the best explanation I've come up with, because from any other standpoint other than you ratted on somebody and so you're out of the family, I don't get it. The other one that struck me, not because of percentage, but just because of utility and usage, much like those linebackers you talked about, was Gunnar Olszewski, the wide receiver, who was just that sort of glue guy, getting those receptions, playing special teams, was a good returner. Really felt like a guy that was gonna play like Troy Brown for a long time with the Patriots, have a distinguished career lengthwise, if not production-wise, and then move on to be an assistant wide receivers coach with the Patriots. And he still may, but he was signed by the Steelers. He's gone. It does feel like they've seen Kyle Duggar.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone, oh.
We want more of that.
Yeah, all the guys that play there could do that. Yeah, those guys can't do that. We want more of that. And we have a lot of these guys because that's the way they built their linebacking core. They had a type at linebacker for a long time. And Duggar's come in and really operates as a dime backer down near the line a lot. It's super important to how they fit the run on defense, but gives them that flexibility, as Duggar does because he's a freak athlete, to be a tight end eraser, even stick with slot receivers if you need to. Like, they've seen that kind of role flexibility and dynamism and went, yeah, okay, we're gonna have to clean the closet a little bit if we want to put more of those players in, so that we can be flexible in a different way than we have been on defense in the past.
Yeah, and I think that was in terms of some of the pickups that we're going to talk about in a little bit. There is an interesting pattern of linebacker / safety / nickel hybrids. And I think that we're going to see some packages this year where it's like, it's dime, but is it though? Because they have a lot of guys that kind of play both spots.
It's heavy dime.
It's heavy dime. Ted Karras, by the way, forgot to mention him. He went to Cincinnati. So they're actually technically replacing both of their guards this year. Hence I don't want to say controversial, but intriguing pick that they made in the first round of the draft that we're going to talk about coming up here. But yeah,
I think that was a league penalty.
Huh?
I think that was a league penalty.
What do you mean?
The league said, well, Patriots, you owe us one, and we don't want Burrow to die. So you have to send Ted Karras to the Bengals. It's unpublished.
So what's the explanation for Shaq to the Bucks? Oh, we want Tom
No,
to
it was
make
a
a run
personal
here.
favor to Tom.
Yeah,
That was family stuff. That's completely different. This was imposed by the league. No, I'm just kidding. That's
are you
my
though? Are you
little
though?
conspiracy theory, family thing,
In terms of guys they re-signed, Trent Brown they brought back for only like less than $6 million, which for a guy that's probably going to start a right tackle for you, great. James White, the ageless James White, receiving back extraordinaire, $2.5 million, 30 years old, keeps on trucking, love it. Jacoby Myers, they had a second round tender that he signed, so he's back. He's Mr. Third Down for them. Mr. Dig route. They're going to call Dagger 50 times a game, and he's going to be the dig that comes wide open underneath. And then, okay, just go catch a million balls over the middle, Jacoby. Try not to die. That's his role. Juwan Bentley is like the one Coke machine linebacker that they did retain because they're always going to have at least one, and he's it, but they couldn't have three anymore. They have to get away from that type. So if they want to play a dime package and have like a 4-down front with like one linebacker that can reliably take on a guard and shed a tackle or shed that block and make a tackle, it's going to be Juwan Bentley, but he's going to be the only one. Everybody else is going to be more flexible.
And he was the youngest one.
And he was the youngest one, true. He's only 26. Devin McCourty, speaking of ageless wonders, defensive coordinator Devin McCourty. Brian Hoyer, quarterback's coach / backup quarterback. I'm just going to keep saying it until it's true because I guarantee you it is. And then Carl Davis, the reason this show even exists in the first place. Carl Davis, also ageless wonder at this point, keeps on trucking. 8 years into his career, brought in as a rotational defensive tackle at less than $2 million a year. Still a pretty good deal for Carl Davis.
If you're familiar with bootleg lore, Carl Davis is the player that Brett and I discussed at length in Mobile in 2020 when we met. Was a bit of a random topic, but we both felt very strongly about him. Ended up talking about him probably 4 or 5 times that week, and I think that's when you knew. You were like, oh, no.
For no particular reason either.
No, he just kept coming up. So we feel we need to immortalize Carl Davis, not necessarily because of his playing production, but because we both loved him as a player. Man, do you freaking believe that Carl Davis didn't get... Anyways, that's the whole reason we're here in the first place, so we're gonna have a little fun with it, but still chugging away on the Patriots. A very Patriots player, really, as an internal defensive lineman who can just eat downs for them and be very assignment sound, strong, stout dude.
In terms of third-party additions, didn't have a whole lot of them, but the ones they did have, again, kind of playing into the whole, trying to get a little bit more flexible on defense. And also giving Mac a little bit more help on offense. Terrence Mitchell, just a veteran corner, is going to be coming in probably more in dime situations, I would imagine. I mean, maybe he's one of their top 3, but I don't know. I still kind of like some of the other guys on the roster, so I'm not totally convinced that he's going to be starting over, either Jack Jones or Marcus Jones. Either of those guys, I still think that they would beat out Terrence Mitchell for a spot in the top 3. In terms of on defense, as I mentioned, they traded for Mac Wilson. That was the other half of the Chase Winovich trade, trying to get a little bit more athletic linebacker, somebody who's a little bit more flexible for them. And then Jabril Peppers, as I mentioned, hybrid safety linebacker, nickel, whatever you want him to do, pretty much in between the numbers. He can do it. He's tough enough to play a quasi linebacker role, quick enough to play nickel, smart enough to, if God forbid, Devin goes out for a game or two, smart enough to run your defense that way. I think that he's a perfect fit for them. Very, very solid player. And he's going to be on the field quite a bit, especially if they're running those dime packages with Bentley as like the one linebacker, and then he's coming in to play like a dime backer. Like that's his gig. So I'm pretty excited to see how him and Duggar are going to be used on the field at the same time because they can do a lot of similar things.
Yeah, and it feels to me like he's 80-85% of Duggar, so they have him listed directly behind Duggar on the depth chart, but that does not mean that they're not going to be on the field in that, is it dime package, the heavy dime package we were talking about absolutely see those guys both having a role because you're not going to know which one is staying down and which one's going in coverage. They can rotate. They can do a lot of the same things. That can be very confusing to an offense. So to be able to get a player like that, it's physically gifted with a lot of experience for $2 million,
it's nothing.
That's nothing. That's Bill the GM helping Bill the coach out quite a bit.
So I'm pretty enthused by how we've seen the Patriots kind of retool their roster over the last couple of years. They're still an older team, but they're actively trying to get younger. They're trying to get faster. They're trying to get more flexible because you've got to deal with some offenses in this division now that are pretty tough to stop. Miami is extremely fast. Buffalo is extremely fast. The Jets, assuming everything works out, have a lot of speed too. Can't be slow anymore. You can't get away with it. They have to be faster, and I think they got faster.
Yeah, you talk about retooling. I want to talk about their wide receiver core a little bit because, again, casual observers of the Patriots from the outside are used to seeing a sort of patched together wide receiving core kind of always. They don't draft a lot of homegrown talent at that spot, and the ones they do don't tend to stick, and they've had limited success in free agency as well. So
yeah, you're being very kind right now.
I am. I'm just yeah. I don't want to get.
I'd bring up Aaron Dobson, but I really don't want to traumatize all the Patriots fans listening to this right now.
That's just because I did pre-pod, anyways. Oh man, no, this wide receiver core is not your maybe half uncle's Patriots wide receiver core. Certainly not your dad's Patriots wide receiver core. Devontae Parker coming over in the trade, Kendrick Bourne, and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby playing that role you mentioned as the super reliable, cross the middle, just need a catch target. The other guys playing more outside. Those are not three guys outside of Myers that Patriots fans have seen. And, last year's free agent baby, Nelson Aguilar, that they paid a ton of money to, is playing backup. Will he play? Absolutely. And then when we get down to the draft, we'll talk about Tyquan Thornton, who it looks like through the early pieces of camp is going to play a significant role and is different again in skill set. So this wide receiver core, again, Bill the GM looking at Bill the coach going, well, I don't seem to be able to draft him, so I need to trade for him. I need to sign him. I'm going to take another swing at drafting him, but I'm going to get a different type, and I'm going to see if I can put weapons around my young quarterback. I feel pretty good about my offensive line. I'm pretty solid there. My running game is different than the rest of the league, but we're very happy with what it does, and we feel good about that. The wide receivers, we just don't feel great about that. So I'm going to exercise some other options and have what essentially is a new look receiving core for the Patriots. And I'm sure Mac's excited about that, to have more and different targets to throw to. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar with them now, Patriots fans, do a little homework. You're going to see a lot of them, I think.
Only 2 of the top 7 Patriots receivers were drafted by the Patriots. They've really done a lot of work, and I'm including Jacoby Myers being a little bit cheeky with it, but he was UDFA, he wasn't drafted. But they've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, because Bourne and Aguilar were last year, and then Parker was this year. They've done a lot to at least try to infuse this team with talent, because the lack of talent at receiver was one of the big reasons why Tom wanted out in the first place. So I'm happy to at least see they're trying not to make the same mistake with Mac. They're trying to give him weapons. Speaking of drafted receivers, by the way, you and I actually really liked their draft class this year. They again, mentioned, had to get younger, had to get faster. They did that at virtually every position that they drafted. It was all about speed and explosiveness and trying to keep up with the Bills.
They brought in a lot of speed. They brought in a lot of speed at positions where maybe they haven't had some. They also just brought in a lot of players. This is one of the larger draft classes in the league. A little more bottom heavy than top heavy just in terms of where their picks were. I'll go through them pretty quickly, and then we'll go right back to the top, because I know you did an entire film room episode on Cole Strange, so I'll let you talk about him a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about Tyquan Thornton, who we saw at the Shrine Bowl. But starting off, round 1, pick 29, Cole Strange, guard from Chattanooga. With, again, the free agency losses, it's a little less surprising, but a lot of Patriots fans were very surprised, putting it mildly. Round 2, pick 50, Tyquan Thornton, the wide receiver from Baylor. Super fast and has made a pretty good impression in his limited time so far in Foxborough. Round 3, pick 85, Marcus Jones, the cornerback from Houston, also a very good returner, so a special teams value there. And then they drop all the way down. Round 4, pick 121, Jack Jones, guy that we, again, saw at the Shrine Bowl, interviewed him there, corner from Arizona State. One of your favorite picks next, also in round 4. They had 3 fourth-round picks. This is the middle one. Pick 127, Pierre Strong Jr., running back from South Dakota State. Another guy we saw at the Shrine Bowl. Another guy you really liked and were higher on than I think some folks. We really thought he was going to be great in an outside zone system. Ends up in New England. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. I know you have strong feelings about that. And then what Patriots draft would it be if with their final pick in the 4th round they didn't pick a quarterback that nobody else was really looking at? Bailey Zappi, the quarterback from Western Kentucky, caught Bill's eye and ended up being a Patriot. They dropped down no 5th-round picks. In the 6th round, again, 3 6th-round picks. So 3 4ths and then 3 6ths. 183, they pick up Kevin Harris, a banger of a running back from South Carolina. 2nd pick 200, Sam Roberts, defensive tackle, Northwest Missouri State. One of the first players in this draft that I had no idea who he was.
It's very Patriots of them.
Patriots are always good for that. I was actually a bit surprised that it was the 6th and not more like the 3rd, but there you go. Last pick in the 6th, 210, Chasen Hines, the offensive lineman from LSU. And their final pick, round 7, way down at 245, Andrew Stuber, offensive lineman, Michigan. I got to say, this one is so Patriots, and 6 years from now, he will be their starting guard or tackle, doesn't matter, and will have played 90 games for them. Yeah. And everybody will be like, Andrew Stuber, wasn't he like a 5th, 6th?
There were so many people where it was like, oh my God, we lost Ted Karras, then the Stuber pick happened. It's like, all right, we got another Ted Karras. We're good. We're fine. We're the Patriots. We'll figure it out.
Speaking of offensive line, talk a little bit about Cole Strange, because, again, you dove deeply into that game, too. I don't know. Were you trying to assuage the fears of the New England faithful, or what were you doing with Cole Strange on Film Room?
I was trying to explain, when you look at the draft in a macro sense, the most reliable position you could take in the 1st round is interior offensive line. And it's not even particularly close. They hit more than every other position. When you have an interior offensive lineman who also happens to be one of the most athletic guard prospects ever, going to a franchise that has a history of developing every single offensive lineman that hits that building. Again, we talk about, they lost Karras, they lost Shaq. Those guys weren't 1st-round picks. They developed them. We have supreme confidence in Stuber because that's what they do. They develop guys. So if you give them that ball of clay to mold when they're already good at molding guys that are significantly less physically gifted than him, I have confidence that he is going to be a Pro Bowl type player quickly, very quickly. His first step is insane. He is one of the freakiest guys in terms of being able to reach block that I've ever seen. And, people talk about the viral clip of McVay saying we were looking at him at pick 144 or whatever the fuck it was. And people are like, oh my God, the Patriots reached. The Rams were looking at him that late. And it's like, well, Kyle Shanahan literally said that same week that they were looking at Cole Strange as a 1st-round pick too. So one team's valuation, especially a team that took Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round, one team's valuation might not be the end-all, be-all here. When you look at the physical talent, how he fits with that coaching staff that already has a history of molding guys. And not to mention, I do think that they took him as an indication of where they're going philosophically. I think they're going to lean more into outside zone now because they have a quarterback that is pretty good at it. He's mobile. He can get out quickly. He can get to his landmarks, hand the ball off. They took Pierre Strong, who's a premier outside zone type runner because he has the speed to threaten the edge and he's got great feet so he can slam on the brakes and cut back like you want from a guy in an outside zone. And oh, by the way, outside zone in the last 3 years of Tom Brady's run with New England was the most common type of run they called. Like, they've kind of wanted to do this for a while, but now they have an athletic quarterback. They have a super fast running back. They have a super athletic guard. Now they can lean into it more than ever and really become 49ers East and run all that same shit. So I think Cole Strange is a key piece to that in terms of becoming that type of run game. I think Pierre Strong's going to play a lot more important role than people think because he's the best back on the roster for doing that type of run. I think Tyquan Thornton's going to be a big beneficiary of that because guess what? As soon as those outside zone runs start working, you got to drop a safety down. You're playing one high. Here comes the deep post to a receiver that runs 4-2, crossing that safety's face, and Matt can hit that ball consistently. This is going to be a very Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, LaFleur type offense because that's what's working around the league. They're going to try it too.
I saw the Cole Strange pick, and I wasn't as taken aback as a lot of Patriots fans, but I also didn't fully understand it until we got down to the middle of the fourth and they took Pierre Strong, and I was like, oh. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, then it makes a lot more sense. So interesting how those two tie together. Tyquan Thornton, tall, more than 6 feet, not super tall, not a tower, very slight, very fast. We thought that meant he was going to be the pure speed guy when we saw him at Shrine Bowl. Not the case. The common phraseology of the day, boy's got some dog in him. He does not give up to cornerbacks. He is a contested catch guy, although he doesn't look like it at first glance. So is very speedy, has pretty good hands, but also competes like crazy on intermediate routes. So think the Damiere Byrd route in terms of, or the Damiere Byrd roll, right? They had him inside, going deep, go on the post, fake the post, go outside. Like, that's Tyquan Thornton. And when you've got a speedy back going to the other side that you have to account for, you're going to get that flow away from the play, and he's going to get one-on-ones. And you don't want Tyquan Thornton one-on-one with just about anybody that's not really, really fast because he is top 10% fast. I want to talk about Marcus Jones too. Marcus Jones played outside at Houston, although he is shorter. He is also tough. He is a dog. He competes against bigger receivers. They didn't rotate him inside against much bigger receivers. Going against SMU, he's playing against a guy 6'2", well over 200 pounds. Nope. Stayed on him one-on-one the whole game outside. Never moved him.
I desperately wanted to throw boxing gloves on him in that game because he wanted to fight that guy so bad.
Yep. And great sort of two-way versatility in terms of Patriots always wanting their players to do more, play special teams. Like, Marcus Jones is a legit threat as a returner. Several return touchdowns in college at Houston. And then Jack Jones, I thought he was too slight. Not just meeting him in person, he's very slight. He's very skilled, but he just sort of wasn't my cup of tea. He has impressed from day one in New England. The New England media are talking up Jack Jones and the role he's going to play early in their defense a lot. So I'm going to sort of take the mini L on this one and wait and see what we get. But he's made a tremendous first impression for the Patriots, which is great. And as you go down the rest of that draft class, all guys that are going to see use. Same thing with Chasen Hines. He gets thrown right into the development factory. Kevin Harris is going to be the opposite. We're talking about lightning and thunder, or, slash and hammer, whatever you want. So you could just see a path for each of these guys, and, a ton of lower round picks to fill. Again, we talked about them being one of the oldest rosters in the league. Ton of young guys, 3 4th rounders, 3 6th rounders, and 7th rounder, just refilling the roster, right?
UDFA wise, I was, to be perfectly honest, I was rather underwhelmed in terms of a lot of the UDFAs they picked up. Like, I look at Miami's class. We talked about, well, we're recording this the same night as the Miami episode, but we talked about yesterday as far as when the episodes come out. Look at Miami's UDFA class versus this one. It is not close. And again, it's the Patriots. They probably know something I don't because they're the Patriots. The only one I really felt excited about was LeBron Ray. And other than that, I was kind of, whatever, take it or leave it.
And where did LeBron Ray play?
Alabama.
Mm-hmm. So they've got all the beta they need on LeBron Ray. I don't disagree with you, and I do disagree with the Patriots and their UDFA approach because this is typical for them. They usually have small classes, not a ton of guys, not a ton of them stick. They do bring in UDFAs from other teams, which is strange to me, but their own UDFA halls are not typically very large, very rich. So, they brought in De'Aaron King for a look. Maybe they thought they could do something with him. He's already gone. He's gone to the CFL. But other than that, what's left? I'm not saying none of these guys will work out because, again, they brought in a couple of guards, right? One of them's probably going to work at least as a practice squatter, whether I know about him or not. An edge rusher from Purdue, cornerback or a safety from Texas. That's not the one that I liked. But, LeBron Ray, I was like, when I saw his name on the list, I was like, Patriot, it's like Carl Davis, right? He's a Carl Davis type. He's going to get in there. He's a little bit less athletic than Carl Davis. But, again, you can see the fit. The rest of them, just a bunch of guys, and that's not atypical for the Patriots. They're not Chris Ballard, let's put it that way. They're not going to bring in 40 guys, get a shot at them, do multiples of the same position, and then just pick the best one. They tend to go smaller and, have one or two. They don't love the process, and that's okay. They've been very successful. This is just the way they approach that facet of it.
By the way, quick note, Liam Shanahan was already released, by the way, for those who I know a lot of eyes immediately zeroed in on that name. As far as I can tell, no relation. He grew up in the area. He was a New England high school kid. Went to Harvard, then played at LSU. But he already got released, so I didn't want to belabor the point too much. But I know a lot of people are like, is this the same Shanahan? As far as I can tell, no. Different family.
They're going to run that wide zone. They needed a Shanahan.
Yeah, well, maybe the wrong one.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of team floor and team ceiling, we're going to have very similar discussions as what we had yesterday. 11-win ceiling, 8-win floor. They're not going to be a bad team. Just like Miami, unlikely to be a bad team. The AFC East is loaded. That being said, I don't see them getting more than 11 because the AFC East is loaded. They're also playing against the NFC North too. So there's a lot of good teams on the docket here. They've got to go through an absolute hellscape of a schedule. They're probably going to split in the division. Like maybe they can rip one off Buffalo and Miami, and like absolute best case scenario, you're winning 4 games in this division, and that can help them get to 11. But the AFC is too tough, and their NFC slate is also too tough for me to put them above 11, and that is not a knock on them. It's more so just being realistic about the conference. The goal is to get to January and figure it out from there. They will have a chance to make a play for the 1 seed, but this is a very tough division to do that in.
Yeah, this is where I pit Dolphins and Patriots fans against each other.
Yeah, they're already pretty good at that by themselves.
Yep, they're all set. I'm just going to sprinkle some gas on that particular fire. And, there were Dolphins fans listening yesterday who were like, yeah, that's it. That's all you think you're going to win? This team's too talented. And there are Patriots fans listening to this episode saying the same thing. And I'm going to go way back to an 80s movie called Highlander and say there can be only one. Right? Because if you're Dolphins and Patriots fans on either side of this debate, how many times have you seen 3 teams within a division win double-digit games?
If I can't remember the last time it happened, if ever, to be honest.
It's technically possible, like it's logistically possible that it could happen. It almost never happens. So I'm just going to go with the Bills winning double-digit games. You're going to have to give me that. And if you say that I don't get it, I'm going to stop listening to you because I think the Bills are winning double-digit games. So only one of these teams, Dolphins or Patriots, is going to be the other double-digit winner if you think they're going to win double-digit games. in this division. They're not going to both. So the floor and ceiling discussion that we had about the Patriots sounds very similar to the Dolphins, but one of them is going to be at the top end of that, and one of them's going to get the ceiling, one of them's going to get the floor, because they both can't get the ceiling if you think the Bills, if you think like I do, that the Bills are going to win double-digit games. One of these two teams is going to win double-digit games, and the other one isn't.
I just had a flashback to the AFC South in 2007, just because I watched a lot of Texans.
I thought you were going to say Highlander 2, and I was going to have to send you a new bottle of scotch, because that was a terrible movie.
Oh, God. There could only be one! But no, I just had a flashback to the 2000 AFC South, because I was like, I think they actually did have 3 teams win double digits that year. And they did. Titans went 10-6, Jags went 11-5, Colts went 13-3. That is literally the only one off the top of my head that I can think of. Like, maybe the NFC West did when they were crazy. And, well, they're still crazy now, but...
Different crazy.
Other than that, man, it's
very, very
not
rare.
common.
For all the divisional finishes, it's got to be in a low single-digit percentage of times that's happened. So if you're a Dolphins fan and you're arguing, no, we're going to win 10 games, and you're a Patriots fan saying, no, we're going to win more than 10 games, one of you is right, but you're probably not both right. So we'll see. They both have the talent. That's why we do ceiling and floor, but one of them's going to get ceiling and one of them's going to get floor. They're not both going to get ceiling.
The NFC West did do it last season. How about that?
Yeah.
Barely, but they did.
Yeah. Barely, and there's 17 games now, so it may start happening slightly more often.
Oh, asterisks. That doesn't count then. In a 16-game season.
Yeah.
For 17.
It's okay. I'm not going to exclude anybody. It's very rare percentage-wise. So is it possible that the Bills, the Patriots, and the Dolphins all win double-digit games? Yes, it's technically possible. It could happen, and they're all talented enough to do it. Is it likely? No, it's highly unlikely. So, it doesn't mean that 3 of those teams don't go to the playoffs. That I could see, with one of them being maybe a 9-game winner. But in terms of 3 of them racking up double-digit wins in that division where they're going to be eating each other, I don't see it happening.
Man, the AFC East is tough. It is only going to get tougher because we got to get to the Bills tomorrow, but this division is one of the most cannibalistic, I think, because all of them, and I mean all of them, are the stuff of nightmares for each other. The Bills are the big bad, but I guarantee you they still are looking over their shoulder at New England and Miami because they've got firepower. And the Jets are just lurking. They're just lurking.
You know what it reminds me of?
Huh?
AFC North.
Oh, it's just black and blue, beat the shit out of each other.
Right, but
get to January and hope for the best.
3 power teams that were going back and forth at each other, and then the bottom one kind of shifted out, but it was always Steelers and Ravens, and then maybe the Browns. Lately Browns have been good, Bengals have been good in there. There's one team at the bottom lurking, right? And AFC East for so long was Patriots, and then the rest. And Bills have ascended under the McDermott and Bean regime. Dolphins look to be ready to step up to that. New England took one sort of down year. Even their bad year we talked about wasn't terrible, and they went right back to double-digit wins. So now you got 3 teams that are at the top, and the Jets really talented but need to take a step. And yeah, all of a sudden we're going to be, AFC East games, interdivisional games are going to, intra-divisional games are going to be super fun to watch because they're all going to be slapping the snot out of each other.
So, we got one more team to go. Bills are tomorrow, and then the AFC East macro kind of look through is on Friday, where we're talking about MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year within the division itself, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure the comments are going to be a fucking war zone, but that's okay. That's why we make these types of shows, because all of you love fighting about football. And it's the offseason. What else are we going to talk about? But we'll be back here same time tomorrow, same place to talk about Bills Mafia and how, if you're going to bet on any horse in the AFC, they might be the best one to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe. We love you, and until tomorrow. Later.
Take care.